Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Sports in the Morning. I am your special guest host, Seven, normally host of podcast named Deferred. I cannot talk this morning. With me, you got to know better. It's Mo Better. What's up, man? How you doing this morning?
Hey, what's good, Seven? Appreciate you stepping in, man. Blessing, everybody. Good morning, chat.
What's up, everybody? Good morning. And man, I'm glad to be here. Don't get the opportunity to come on very much. We got a lot to talk about. Week 4 in the NFL. A lot to talk about there. Cal Raleigh hit 60 last night. A lot to talk about there. It's going to be a great show. Man, let's start in the NFL world because definitely both have a lot more comfort in there together. We got the Cardinals and the Seahawks starting it off tonight, week 4. Could there have been a worse matchup to put in primetime this week? That's my question.
No, they found a way. They did pretty good. I guess you could have went New Orleans Panthers. That could have been worse. But yeah, look, here's what I'll say. It has the potential to be a terrible game. But I always call Kyler Murray the ultimate wild card. Because you don't know. You do know when you play the Cardinals, you want to get pressure off the middle, but if you're not disciplined in your rush lanes, that's when Kyler Murray's at his best. He is at his best actually when it's a broken play. You don't want him scrambling around in a broken play because that's when Kyler Murray can make things happen. So I think Seattle's clearly the better team and the more balanced team on both sides of the football. The Cardinals have a huge loss, obviously, with James Conner being out. I think Benson's a capable fill-in. I just don't think that Arizona offense is going to be able to move the ball as well against that Seattle defense. Sam Darnold had a really good bounce-back game last week, and it helps that he's got a solid run game to set him up in play action. I like Seattle in a fairly comfortable win.
I'm definitely going to lean towards Seattle in this matchup, but I think you're right. Kyler Murray is definitely a wild card. A lot of time, I spent a lot of time living in Arizona, a lot of time watching that kid play. He's got some talent. It's just it's kind of hard to peg him sometimes. And then you also look at Arizona just lost James Conner. So you know if Trey Benson's still in your fantasy wire, available, would be a great pickup to get you some points, especially if you had James Conner, because he's 15 to 20 touches. You're gonna get some points out of him if you're trying to get somebody to at least get you 10 points. You can probably get it at Trey Benson. What are your thoughts on Darnold in Seattle? How do you think he's faring compared to what he was the showing that we got when he was in Minnesota last year?
Obviously, week 1 was a struggle, a bumpy start for him. But I will say this, that because Seattle is predominantly a run-first offense, I think Sam Darnold is a lot better at coming off of play action. And It's not like Seattle is bereft of weapons. They have weapons across the board. They have a solid offensive line. That division is a complicated division. I think the Rams are the best team in the division, but I don't think they've run away with the division because of Seattle. I think you have to watch those two football teams. I think it's the Rams and Seattle. I know my Niners are 3-0, but it's one of the most deceptive 3-0s in all of the NFL. And they just lost another body, their best pass rusher. So at some point, with all the bodies dropping, it catches up to you, right? It does.
It has to.
It has to. I think Seattle's a good football team. And I think Sam Darnold, I'm not saying he's going to have the year that he had last year, but I think he's going to have a good season.
Sam Darnold, I've been pretty high up on Sam Darnold. I think that there's a lot of talent there, and he could end up being kind of like a more modern day Ryan Fitzpatrick, in that he kind of ends up as more of just a journeyman that kind of moves around a little bit. If Seattle finds their next piece, they move on from him and he ends up somewhere else. Maybe Jared Goff finally retires and he ends up in Detroit for a little while before moving on. Like, there's a lot of different possibilities with him.
I like that.
There's a lot of talent there as well. Like he's got a great arm when he wants to. But you gotta, the best way to use him is a run first, play action heavy offense, and you'll get a lot of dinking and dunking, but he'll give you a 10-minute drive that keeps the opponent's quarterback off the field, gives your defense a time to breathe. And that's a lot of times that's really all you need to get through a season where you can get yourself in a good position. So I like Sam Darnold. I think if I was Minnesota, I would have kept him because I'm not so sure about JJ McCarthy still.
A lot of people aren't. And I'm not saying that JJ McCarthy can't develop into a starting quarterback. My problem is he's still developing. That's the whole thing. He's still developing. And he might be one of those guys that needs to go the old school route where he needs to sit for a couple of seasons before he's ready. Because right now, he certainly doesn't look ready right now. No. And I think you hit on something really good about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is the kind of guy that can be your starting quarterback. He can be a really good quarterback, but I feel like he's going to always be a placeholder quarterback. He's going to be good for you, really good, but you're going to still be looking for your next guy, right? He's going to have that Fitzpatrick. I can even go way back, Steve DeBerg like career where he is the placeholder for the next guy.
No, and it's, I don't think that it's a slight to Darnold to say that he's kind of going to be that journeyman Fitzmagic. Steve DeBerg is a good name. I thought about him in a long time. I don't think it's a bad thing to call him that guy because that's an important job in the NFL. A guy that you can rely on, that's not going to make you go 1-16, that's not going to throw 40 interceptions in a season. Because I think that almost because of personality and approach alone, that would probably more fall on a guy like Jameis Winston, but he's so much more inconsistent and unreliable that you have to have him as your third string behind Jackson, Dart, and Russ as kind of just that entertainment in the locker room, because you don't know if you're going to get 10 interceptions or 40. So it's an important job. And I hope that he's able to get some consistency somewhere, because he definitely has talent, even if he's not a top 10 quarterback. He's top 15, I would say.
He's a good football player.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you mentioned your 49ers injury woes. What's going on, man?
Look, the Niners have really had injury woes if you look at it over the last 2 or 3 seasons. They just have. And eventually that just catches up to you. They're 3-0 to me because, yes, Mac Jones has been really solid filling in for Purdy. Shanahan has not overcomplicated the play calling of the offense, and I think that fits what Mac Jones can do. In a weird way, the NFL genius pointed out to me, and he's right, Mac Jones and Brock Purdy's skill sets are very similar. And so it was a pretty smooth transition. But I think they're primarily 3-0 because Robert Saleh has done a pretty good job with the defense, and they do have a soft schedule. I look at the Niners and I go, if they beat the teams they're supposed to beat, they've got a shot to make the playoffs. I don't think it's a lock because, again, bodies continue to drop, and at some point they're going to go up against a defense that immediately challenges Mac Jones to push the ball down the field. They're going to attack him, and then we're going to find out what Mac Jones is able to do. So I'm happy that they're 3-0, but I'm concerned because they don't get a lot of explosive plays down the field. Nothing comes easy to them offensively.
I think you're right. And I think that they can kind of, this week against Jacksonville, I think they have the potential to kind of maybe stretch it out a little bit. But they're going to see some heat from the Rams. And I think Tampa Bay is even going to put some pressure on them. And that's going to be a true test as to see what you can really get out of Mac Jones as a quarterback. Can you use him as trade bait to get some picks or maybe another piece that you need after Brock Purdy comes back and, before the deadline? Or is he going to be that all-time backup? Chase Daniel, but with, not as much hair grease type of guy. Every time I see him on a morning show, I just wonder how many jars of hair gel they had to use to hold that down like that. That's the first thing.
It's prolific, that's for sure. Speaking of teams, I know you're a Chiefs fan, right?
Right.
How do you feel about the matchup coming up? Because obviously it's a big game, and nobody would have thought coming into this week that a Lamar Jackson or a Patrick Mahomes team could be 1-3, right? Somebody's going to be 1-3 when it's all said and done.
I feel comfortable for two reasons. And I'm not okay. Comfortable is a better. I'm optimistic. That's the word I use. I am optimistic for two reasons. First of all, Steve Spagnuolo has had Lamar Jackson's number for a number of years. Lamar Jackson checks under his bed for Steve Spagnuolo before he goes to sleep. Or he has his mom do it. And I think that's going to play a big part because Steve Spagnuolo is great at making Lamar Jackson throw. And for whatever reason, despite how much of an elite talent he is, when you put Lamar Jackson into a situation where he has to throw a lot more than he wants to, it gets unsettling for him. And you start to see inconsistent, you see bad decision-making, you see bad rollouts, and that plays into Kansas City's strengths, at least in my opinion. Now, the other reason is, if you go back and you look at what was it? It was Monday night they played, right? It was Monday night.
Right.
They did not look like the same team that they did the first 2 weeks. That they looked off. And when you see the Ravens get rattled, it takes them a little bit to get right. It's not like where you see, Andy Reid's record after a loss is insane. He very rarely loses 2 in a row. That happens a lot more frequently with the Ravens. I want to see the offense get back into rhythm. And we saw Kansas City's offense get into rhythm on Sunday. Now, of course, it was against the Giants. So you can take that take that for what it's worth. But, colleges start the year with a tune-up game. Kansas City's tune-up game may have just come a little late. And now you get to see them get into rhythm, especially in the second half. That offense looked more in sync than we've seen so far this season. And I think that bodes well as you go into a tough matchup. Do I understand why Gene said that Kansas City was going to be the one to start 1-3? Absolutely. As much as it hurts. As much as it frustrates me every time I watch the intro for Coffee and Sports to see that, of course, he included scenes where the Eagles did well against the Chiefs, but he didn't show anything from that Super Bowl a few years ago where they got absolutely cooked. We're not going to talk about that. But I understand. For me, though, it's going to come down to the offensive line for Kansas City. Juwan Taylor is just as much of a liability, if not more of a liability, than Orlando Brown Jr. was. And that position has been a struggle for Kansas City to fill with a quality piece for a little while now. And I really think since Andrew Wiley went down, if I recall correctly, is who was in there before Orlando Brown Jr. Or Riley Fisher, somewhere, one of those two. But that's really what it's going to come down to. If that line can give Patrick the time he needs so that they can start using the deep ball the way that they want to, Kansas City is going to be a force to be reckoned with when Rashee Rice comes back. Xavier Worthy is supposed to play this week. I think that bodes well for Kansas City as well. I'm optimistic. Do I think it's going to be as smooth sailing as it was in previous years? No. I know we got spoiled. But I also had to suffer through Romeo Crennel and Brody Croyle. So, it was nice to have a couple of years where I was spoiled.
No, look, I totally understand. And the interesting thing about this matchup is is who do you trust more is always the question. Kansas City's offense or the Ravens' underachieving defense? Because if you look on that side of the football, the Ravens have talent across the board on their defense. Like, that's supposed to be a top 5 defense. And it's been anything but that. And when teams can run the ball down your throat, especially in the middle, right at the heart of the offensive line, they're just running it straight up the gut. Nothing fancy. That's a problem. And honestly, even though the Chiefs' offense has struggled because it's basically been Patrick doing what Patrick has to do to make the offense move, I trust the Chiefs' offense much more than I trust the Ravens' defense. And I trust that Spags is going to continue to stifle Lamar Jackson. Spags is not going to let Derrick Henry have a 100-yard rushing game. They're going to stifle. They'll shut Henry down, and they're going to make Lamar more of a passer than a runner. So I'm not worried about the defense. The only question is the offense, and I still trust 15 over the Ravens defense.
And you pointed out something great that I really was like, it was there. I just hadn't really come up because my coffee is still waiting for my cold brew to kick in. When your weakness is allowing runs up the middle, and you're getting ready to face Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, that's not going to bode well for your offense, for your defensive line, because that's their favorite thing to do. Isaiah Pacheco runs like he's angry with the ground. Kareem Hunt still wants to prove something and try and get a ring before he leaves Kansas City because of how much of what he missed
the first time around.
Right. So you've got two guys that have so much to prove. It's so much that they want to do and so much anger. And you're going to give them the ability to spend a bunch of time running up the middle? If Kansas City controls the clock, it's going to be hard for the Ravens to not have to transition into throw mode. And I have made I have not hidden the fact that I do not believe in Todd Monken as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller, because he makes some horrible decisions. He's made some good ones, but in crunch time, he has made horrible decisions more times than not, especially against Kansas City. He's another one that probably checks underneath his bed for Steve Spagnuolo.
He's not alone. Like under that bed, there's a plethora of offensive coordinators hiding with him. Spags is the nightmare that many offensive coordinators have. I never worry about the Chiefs defense.
And then it's after dealing with Bob Sutton for so long. I have respect for Bob Sutton. He definitely had his abilities as a defensive coordinator in Kansas City. But after, there was a lot of inconsistencies and slow starting and stuff like that Chiefs fans had to deal with under Bob Sutton. What's up, Keith? Thank you for dropping in. We appreciate you. The Kansas City fans had to deal with under Bob Sutton that have virtually gone away with Steve Spagnuolo. And, for me, like that's a very comforting feeling. I know that Chris Jones is going to be right there locking it down. I know that we're going to see the secondary ball hawk, especially as much time as they had last week to pick off balls. And it was only 1, 2. I think it should have been 2 and 1 was called back, if I recall correctly. You give them that much time, and that's exactly what's going to happen here, because Lamar Jackson's improvisational skills when it comes to throwing are not as great. And so I like this matchup for Kansas City. Would I be surprised if the Ravens win? No, because they are a talented team. But their flaws are matching up with a budding Kansas City team at the wrong time. Just like it seems to happen, unfortunately for them, every year when they face Kansas City early.
No, I agree. And I would add one more thing. Knowing Spags and the kind of D coordinator he is, he looks at every little detail. And the fact is not lost on him that Derrick Henry has lost 3 footballs. He's fumbled 3 times in 3 games. You don't think he's going to have his linebackers or his linemen punching down at the football, trying to make Derrick Henry even more conscious of not fumbling. If a running back is focusing on not fumbling the football, he's not running the football. He's trying to protect.
Right.
He's trying to protect the ball more than run the football. Trust me, Spags is going to make him conscious of holding onto the football.
And Spags has done a very good job over his career against Derrick Henry. I think he's only allowed 100-yard game, if I recall correctly, maybe 2. And they've faced him more than a handful of times. Spags has. So I like that matchup there. And that's the thing, is as long as Kansas City can do it's the same thing they did last year. You keep Derrick Henry into a certain lane, you make him uncomfortable, you force the Ravens to throw, and Lamar Jackson and Todd Monken will show you who they are when that happens. It's
it's going to be an odd season because if they go 1-3, we're always talking about the Ravens faltering on the back end of the season. I've never seen them do it this early. If they're going to be this bad this early, this might be a down year for them where they don't recover.
And I don't think you're wrong on that, because the Ravens, the Ravens rely on momentum. They rely on momentum to get going and to be in the mind of their opponent. And if you start 1-3, and then you look at just after this week what the Ravens' schedule looks like, which after you get done with Kansas City, if you're the Ravens, you got to go to Houston, which that can kind of be a get right game, but Houston's defense can definitely make some noise. And you've got the Rams before a bye week. You could potentially go 1-2 out of the next 3 games. And then you're looking at that's potentially starting 2-5?
Yeah. Look,
that's hard to recover from.
If they can't beat Houston, they're not going to make the playoffs.
No.
As good as the Texans defense is, their offense is horrible. If they can't beat the Texans, they're not going to make the playoffs.
Was CJ Stroud's good year a fluke, or is this just a team composition issue with him?
I think Stroud is the real deal, but if you've watched them, their offensive line has actually managed to be worse than it was last year. And it was like whenever you see CJ Stroud running for his life, he's not looking down the field. He's running for his life. I think he's a legitimate franchise quarterback. I don't think it was a fluke, but I do think he's had his struggles, because we talk about this. When a guy has a great rookie season, what happens? The league, they get film on him, they adjust to him. Then it's on him to adjust to the league, adjusting to him. Stroud didn't do that great a job last year when the league adjusted to him, but it didn't help the fact that he has one of the worst offensive lines in football. And I would argue that somehow, some way, it's even worse. I think that once they fix the offensive line, you'll see that he's a true franchise quarterback. The only question is, though, I'll say this to you, Seven: when are they going to fix the offensive line? You know what I mean? Because they're not going to do it in the middle of the season. Like he's probably going to have to get used to the concept of running for his life. He's going to have to learn how to make plays on the run, and I don't think that's a strength.
It's not. You have the benefit of a young quarterback like CJ Stroud coming from a pro style offense in college, because that's one thing that Ohio State does well, is the pro style offense. Guys that come out of Ohio State in skill positions offensively tend to be better than coming from schools that don't run that kind of offense. So I will say that to his credit, he does have a leg up there. And I think it's one of the reasons why he was successful as a rookie, because I'm normally one of those, when it comes to rookie quarterbacks, I don't like them starting fresh out of college, because there's so much of an adjustment period they have to go through with the difference in the offense and the day-to-day. The game speed is so much quicker. But he transitioned well because of where he came from. Now you're looking at, just like you said, he does not have enough protection. It's kind of like what Joe Burrow's dealt with in Cincinnati. There's a few guys. Jackson Dart is not going to have any protection.
He is not.
And I'm worried about that kid, because he's got talent, but He's not gonna have time to make a decision. And we're what, week 4? And you're already throwing him in?
The difference between him is this, though. He has what Russell Wilson had 7 or 8 years ago. Jackson Dart has live legs. So when the rush comes, and his reads aren't there, Jackson Dart's going to take off. And it's going to be great at first until he starts getting hit. Because he does not protect himself whenever he takes off. He's got to learn how to get down on the ground, because right now, at least what I saw in the preseason, he thinks he's a running back. That does not bode well for your starting quarterback if he doesn't know how to protect himself.
And that is going to be to his benefit. My biggest concern is for the Giants with Jackson Dart. You're choosing to start him in week 4 against a much more potent Chargers defense. And I'm not saying they're the best, but I still think they're a top 10 defense.
Agreed.
And when in week 5 you're facing New Orleans, do you let Russ take a beating for another week, give Dart a little bit more time to get his fingers in the playbook and get comfortable with the speed before you turn him loose against a much easier team to come out to in the Saints versus the abuse that he's going to face? Because Harbaugh's not going to play with this kid. He's gonna send the smoke.
No, and it's funny because I thought that was going to be the original plan, that if Russ was struggling, they would start Dart against the Saints. That's when he would get his first start. And look, maybe this is Daboll saying, I have this much confidence in this kid, I'm going to put him out there against the Chargers. That's a tall order. That's a good Chargers defense. They play a physical brand of football, especially the way Harbaugh coaches football. I wouldn't have done it. But look, maybe Daboll's feeling the heat. Remember, the mandate was before the season started, you make the playoffs or you're fired. That was the mandate. So if I'm Daboll, I got no choice but to pull out all the stops, because look, I think Russell Wilson's had a really good career. Arguably, you could put him in the conversation for Hall of Fame, but whatever career he's had, I think he's done.
That's
actually a good conversation. Russell Wilson in the Hall of Fame. And the thing is, there's one guy that opens the door up for Russell Wilson to get in the Hall of Fame.
Who?
It's Eli. Eli is going to get in the Hall of Fame. And if you look at their careers, Russell Wilson had a better career. It's not even close. What Eli has over Russell Wilson, he has one more Super Bowl win. That is it. Eli Manning, I think Eli's made like 4. I don't even have numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure Eli made 4 Pro Bowls, maybe 5. Russ has made 10. He's had a better career. Even if you look at Russell Wilson now, people say he's cooked. I was looking at their numbers the other day. Eli has thrown for 130 more interceptions than Russell Wilson. Eli Manning, he's had a better football player than Russell Wilson. What Eli Manning has on his resume is he has 2 great Super Bowl runs. But if you look at his time with the Giants, everything that happened around those 2 Super Bowl runs, the Giants were getting the brakes beat off of them. They were horrible football teams. He has those 2 runs. If Eli Manning gets into the Hall of Fame, Russell Wilson is going to get in the Hall of Fame.
So I think there's a couple of things at play here. And I think that you're right. Eli Manning does have the extra Super Bowl. I think that Eli Manning's Super Bowls hold a little bit more weight than Russ's do because of the fact that Eli beat Brady for both of his Super Bowls. And I do think that that's going to hold a weight into that vote. But we also look at the flip side. Russ's second Super Bowl, it was not his fault that they lost that. That was Pete Carroll not calling the ball to Marshawn on the goal line like they should have.
Right. Worst play call ever.
For real. But so the question becomes, do how do you consider that? But when you look at the numbers, because I'm looking at them right now, and you're right. Russ has 10 Pro Bowls to Eli's 4. But Eli also has 2 Super Bowl MVPs. He doesn't just have Super Bowl wins. Russ didn't even get the Super Bowl MVP in the Super Bowl that he won. And so there's reasons that you can argue either way. Personally, I can see Russ getting in, but I think he would be one of those guys that's more tail end of the eligibility. The list is a little shorter that year, so it's a little easier to put him in because the pond's a little thinner. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think he's first ballot. I don't think he's first ballot.
No,
but then no. Eli isn't either. That's not a surprise.
No,
I'm just saying that. So we can give Eli credit for the 2 Super Bowls, and he's deserving of that. And you're right. He beat Tom Brady, but he also beat Tom Brady because he had the benefit of having a terrific defense that shut down Tom. It's not like Eli doesn't play defense.
Right.
It was the defense that shut down a Patriots offense that nobody could shut down, but the Giants did that. So I'm going to give Eli credit, but the same way Russ had a great defense, he had a great defense. And so all I'm saying is he's got the 2 Super Bowl runs, but the rest of his career is nothing to talk about, nothing to brag about.
Really
he was a bad quarterback for most of his career.
I would honestly take the defensive comparison, though, with those two is hard because Eli had 2 great defenses for his 2 Super Bowl runs, but I would still take that 1 year with the Legion of Boom over both of those defenses. And I think that speaks to the weight because that was a really good defense that Russ had at his back. And I'm not saying he's Trent Dilfer by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, that was a really good defense. And so it's difficult, but like if it fell where because of, recency bias and stuff like that and how Russ's career has kind of petered off, if it took until the Veterans Committee for him to get in and he didn't get it on a traditional ballot, I wouldn't be surprised.
And you might be right. What I would say is the problem with Russ is his career has turned into, I'm going to call it the Dwight Howard effect. You're seeing Russ on the back end of his career go to multiple teams and kind of have mediocre success, but not enough success that warrants the team bringing him back. So you don't remember Russ, Seattle Supersonic or Seattle Seahawks quarterback. You're looking at Russ, the Denver Broncos quarterback, Russ, the Steelers quarterback, and now Russ, the Giants quarterback, and where he's lost his job in multiple places. To Eli's one standing graces this entire career was as the Giants quarterback. He didn't play anywhere. And he didn't play anywhere else.
No, and I think that you're 100% correct in that. It's crazy to think that as much as we can, anybody that's a more than a casual football fan understands that Eli was a product of success of everything that was around him. But the NFL is a team sport. This isn't tennis. This isn't NASCAR where you've got one guy doing all the work. And even NASCAR is more of a team sport. Like it's whereas when you look at Russ, there wasn't as much attention on him. There wasn't as much success out of his corner. Eli was relatively consistent. And again, partially because of the record around him. Although the one thing I think that could work into Russell Wilson's favor, if you look at the comparison of these two guys, even though Eli played in 34 more games, Eli finished with a 500 record in the regular season, 117 and 117. Russ was 121, 80 and 1. He won more games percentage-wise than Eli did. And that's the job of the quarterback, is to win the game.
Right. And so that's my point. Here's a good example. If you go way back, take a guy, for instance, like Jim Plunkett, right? Jim Plunkett won 2 Super Bowls for the Raiders. But outside of those 2 Super Bowl runs in which he helped them win Super Bowls, you wouldn't want to talk about Jim Plunkett's career. It wasn't very impressive. It wasn't very good. Jim Plunkett's not he's not in the Hall of Fame. Outside of those 2 Super Bowl runs, you would not look at Eli. Man, just strip away the 2 Super Bowls. and just look at his career, it wouldn't even be a conversation. It wouldn't be a conversation. Eli Manning is predominantly going into Super Bowl or going into the Hall of Fame. Yes, off the strength of those 2 Super Bowl runs, and also because his last name is Manning.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, and you're 100% correct. Jim Plunkett, man, I haven't thought about that guy in a long time. Eli is definitely a product of the success of the individuals around him. And Russ did not have as much around him because, yes, he had a legendary, I think, I've started to realize that I think that Pete Carroll is Sean McVay 1.0. Like, I mean, when he was younger, he was the Sean McVay of the league. And now we look at Sean McVay, he got his win, and we're not seeing anywhere near the success. We're seeing consistency, but we're not seeing steep success. He's success. He's just an above average coach with a lot of energy. And that's Pete Carroll. So you've got a guy that's just got the consistency there, but not a lot of success that you would think would come from the position that he's in. So I think he gets in, but I don't think I think it's one of those where he's going to get I think the marker's 75% of the vote. I think he gets 77, 78. I don't think he breaks 80 the year that he gets in. And yeah, definitely not first
look, no, he's not. And look, I think Russell will eventually get in, but I guess my point is he's not going to be sitting at a bar somewhere begging to get in like Drew Pearson, right? He's going to, at some point, he'll actually get in. You know what I mean? He goes, "Oh, they broke my heart again." Like Drew didn't break your heart. You're not supposed to be in. You're not supposed to be in. Here, let me ask you this: a guy that I was a big fan of, and a lot of people were, Kurt Warner. Look at Kurt Warner's career, in its entirety. And Kurt Warner made the Hall of Fame. And to his credit, Kurt Warner won a Super Bowl, was a Super Bowl MVP, also lost a couple of Super Bowls. But we thought Kurt Warner was buried. Like when he left the Rams because they benched him. He was done. He goes to the Giants. He was horrible with the Giants. Now, very similar to Russ because he had a horrible offensive line, but everybody had written Kurt Warner off as done, like toast. Goes to the Cardinals and didn't go there as a starter. He was the backup, gets an opportunity, resurrects his career, and takes the Cardinals on a great Super Bowl run. Looked like he was on the verge of winning the Super Bowl, was going to win the Super Bowl if Ben Roethlisberger doesn't make what I think to this day is still the most perfect pass I've ever seen, catch in the Super Bowl. I've never seen a pass that perfect in that position, but it took that to beat him. But if you look at all of Kurt Warner's career, if you're a numbers guy and you look at the numbers, what no one talks about with Kurt Warner is the touchdown numbers are really high, but the interception numbers are almost just as high. And nobody ever mentions that.
I have an experience that not everybody does with Kurt Warner. I used to be a season ticket holder for the Arizona Rattlers, the arena football team in Phoenix. In 1998, Kurt Warner was the starting quarterback for the Iowa Barnstormers. They faced off against the Arizona Rattlers in the Arena Bowl championship. I was at that game. And I watched, despite the fact that the score was 55-33, I watched him give up, what was it? It was either 3 or 4 picks. He spent a lot of time on his butt because he got sacked quite a few times. And at that point, and then when he gets picked up and goes to the Rams, gets them to the Super Bowl and wins the Super Bowl, was it 2001, if I recall correctly? I was shocked because of how much he had grown as a quarterback from what I had seen in the late 90s when he was just playing arena football. Like, I don't think there is somebody that I can think of in the NFL that went from the Arena League, which a lot of people were hoping was going to be a development league for the NFL, and it's just not. And I think it's, from somebody who's watched a lot of arena games, it's a different game. It's just a different game. It's quicker. it's hard. It's to a point. It's harder hitting. It's just a different game. But we haven't seen anybody else have any kind of success in the NFL coming from the arena game, and so I think that kind of does work into his favor because it makes his story interesting. And to a point, the Hall of Fame is about stories. But you are right. You are right in the fact that his touchdown numbers are high, but his interception numbers are higher, or his interception numbers are really high as well. I remember that.
And I'm not saying he's not deserving of being in the Super Bowl, by the way. I'm not saying that, or in the Hall of Fame at all. I'm not saying that because you're right. His story, it makes it that much more impressive. From where he came from. Mm-hmm. I remember him talking about the story of he was bagging groceries when he got the call. And so like I said, when you look at what he did in the short period of time that he played, I think he's absolutely deserving of it. But I think that we do have our favorites. We do have the guys that have a better story. Somebody brought this up to me a while back, even before I started thinking about Russell Wilson as a potential Hall of Famer, is does your, how can I say this, your authenticity or your authentic self or your likability factor in? Because
absolutely,
because while Russ, he's not a villain, but you could make the case that he's not the most authentic guy either.
He's a lot more closed off and reserved, and I think the NFL at the end of the day, NFL is about entertainment, and I think it's one of the reasons, like, if Jameis Winston had Russell Wilson numbers, there wouldn't be a question of Jameis Winston's going to the Hall of Fame. Because he's got a personality, he's entertaining, he's in the forefront of your mind. People forget that Russell Wilson still plays in the NFL because of how quiet he is. And so I think that the marketability of your persona, of your playmaking ability, plays an impact in that decision when you're a fringe guy. Because, you mentioned Jim Plunkett. He's got a couple of he's got a Super Bowl MVP. He was a rookie of the year. And what was that? 79, 80, 81, something
way
like that.
Back, yeah.
So, but he doesn't have the marketability of a guy like, for that guy would have been like what? Staubach was big back in that day.
Oh, that's a good one.
Somebody like that, talent wise, they may have been closer, but Staubach was a lot more marketable. And that made it a lot easier to get behind a guy like him versus a guy like Plunkett. And I think the same goes here. It's harder for some people to justify Russ because the first things we're thinking of are Sierra assessment. We're thinking of the loss on this and the Super Bowl loss. We're thinking of the times that he's fallen short, the bouncing around he's done recently versus that one season was a spectacular season. My son is a Seahawks fan because of that season. And so I think, marketability, man. I think it makes a difference.
You know what? Good point. Thank you, Jory. Jory brings up a good point. Russ has a way of making people not like him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what and I can't put my finger on it. Yeah, remember that? I mean, think about what he did. He went to Denver. And remember, he had his own training staff separate of the team. Remember that? He didn't work out with. He had his own office. Like, talk about a way to alienate yourself from your teammates right off the bat.
Who needs that? Tom Brady did not have his own office.
Right.
He had his own nutritionist. I mean, he did have his own trainer away from the Patriots facility.
Correct.
And his trainer that was away from Alex Guerrero worked with the Patriots staff and supplemented what they were doing along with adding stuff in. But he did not alienate himself from his team. And that whole Denver thing, I think if he were to not get it, his time in Denver would be why. Like that's where I sit with it, because there is so much that went wrong there for him to be in that position, for Sean Payton to instantly walk in and go, no, I'm done. Like he was done before the season even started. He knew where it was going to go.
You knew as soon as Sean Payton became the head coach, the first thing Sean Payton was going to do was make an example of Russell Wilson, and that's what he did. And I'm not saying everything he did to Russ was right, but he made Russ his whipping boy, and he made it. He established right away, you're not my guy. You're the quarterback until I can get my guy, but we're going to get rid of you. Like, that wasn't a secret. We all knew that. And Jory brings up another point. Russ is pretentious. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I don't think I've ever seen Russell Wilson on TV give an authentic reaction or emotion or an interview. Like, everything he does it by the book. Like it's like somebody literally wrote out a script. He doesn't give you anything real. Like if you asked him this week, hey Russ, how do you feel? You've been benched. They're going to start Jackson Dart. Most guys would be like, I'm not happy about it. But I know this is a decision the coach has made, so I'm going to respect that, but I'm going to stay ready. That's at least an honest answer. Russ won't even give you that.
No, he won't. No, it's yeah. And like what Ando brought up, the high knees on the plane when they were doing that international trip. Man, if I'm flying international, I'm getting ready to play a pro game, and you're high stepping it, you're doing high knees in the aisles. Man, I'm gonna catch a fine because I'm not gonna be happy.
Right?
Because and it's when you're playing a team sport. Like I've played team sports, I'm sure you have. There has to be a sense of selflessness and respect for what you're doing and how it's impacting your teammates. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about you. That's the important, there's no I in team. And that has been severely lacking from a large portion of Russ's career. And I think that's why so many people get turned off to him.
Well, look, how about this? If nothing else, you point this out a lot, and I'm with you. He's married to Sierra. That's not bad. So,
I mean, he could be doing a lot worse. I'm
just saying, we can talk about what his work life is like, but all appearances say that he's got a pretty great home life. So good for him.
Yeah. I mean, no, and you're 100% correct. Like it could be a lot worse. We're getting closer towards the end. And, last night we saw a couple of things happen in the world of baseball. Cal Raleigh, catcher for the Seattle Mariners, has joined a very exclusive club. He has now hit 60 home runs on the season. The most home runs hit by a switch hitter. Most home runs hit by a catcher. He has now set the Mariners home run record, passing Griffey. And the Mariners still have, what is it? The Mariners. Oh, and because the Astros lost last night, which I thought was hilarious. The Mariners have officially locked down the American League West and won the division. Is there, and they have, let me see, where's the skit? There it is. That's what I was looking for. And then they play Colorado today. So they're playing, they're at home. They're in Seattle, but they're playing against Colorado today. And then they finish up the season with 3 against the Dodgers at home. If he breaks the AL home run record, which is 62, so if he gets to at least 63, does that settle the American League MVP?
I think it should. 60. Look, I think at 60 home runs, it's weird that he's not getting more love than he should be. For 60 home runs, breaking Griffey's record as a Mariner. And you're right. There's the potential there that he might not be done till he gets to be around 60. What if he gets 63 or 64 dingers? how does he not win the American League MVP? I get it. It's a popularity thing or whatever, but this right here is about merit. The season that this guy's having as a catcher, as a switch hitter, I'm not a voter, but he would have my vote.
He would have my vote, not just because Aaron Judge plays for the Yankees. So and Ando and I on podcast Name Deferred, we were talking about it last night. If we switched Cal Raleigh to the Yankees and Aaron Judge to the Mariners, Cal Raleigh is already the MVP favorite. Like it's runaway at that point. And Judge is in the conversation, but it's clear that he's going to be second.
Yeah.
And that to me speaks volumes because yes, Judge is hitting, was it 328? He has over 50 home runs. Third time in 4 years he's hit over 50. That's great. And the Yankees had a serious struggle when Judge was injured. All things that are true. But a switch hitting catcher that performs behind the plate and at the plate is not something you see very often. And that to me holds weight. So he's got my vote now. If I'm a voter, he's got my vote now. But he breaks 63. He hits that 63 mark. In my opinion, at that point, there shouldn't be a question. But that's just.
So while we're on the subject, that part we agree on. Even though I can't say I'm 100% certain the voters are going to see it the way we see it. But let me ask you about the National League. Is it as simple as it's Ohtani and keep it moving? Is it that simple?
Yes and no. That's what it's going to be. Yes, because that's what it's going to be. But as a baseball fan, I say no. And while I respect the talent of Shohei Ohtani, and I know that Gene would probably disagree with me on this because I know he's a big Ohtani fan. For me, Ohtani hasn't even pitched 50 innings this year. Like there are position players with the Athletics that have pitched as many innings as Shohei Ohtani has this year. So for me, it's hard for me to just give Shohei he's a two-way player credit and hand him the MVP, right? Because when you take away that 50 innings, all he's done this year is DH. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give a DH MVP for the league because there's so much more to the game than just hitting. I would give a pitcher an MVP before I would give a DH because pitchers have more of an impact than DHs to me. When you look at it like, Key's argument for Kyle Schwarber has merit. The biggest thing, if Kyle Schwarber was hitting above 260, like 260, 270, 275, somewhere in there, I think that there's more of an argument for Schwarber, but he's only hitting 241. And that makes it harder to justify the the results. Because like when you look at the National League as a whole, the leader for batting average for the National League is Trey Turner. Home runs though is Kyle Schwarber. RBIs, Kyle Schwarber. And then, but you also have Trey Turner, who leads in hits and second stolen bases in the National League. Like there is an argument, there is a reasonable argument for Trey Turner or Kyle Schwarber that is easier for me to justify than it is for Shohei. I've got over in that corner over there is a Shohei Funko from his Angels years. I love Shohei. I don't see enough out of him this year to justify the MVP, but that's who's going to get it.
Okay, so real quick, is he getting it based off of, and I'm not saying that he hasn't played well, but is he getting it based off of his name more than his game? Is that, I'm trying to simplify.
That is a good question. And here's what I will say about his game. He hit 281. He's hit 281 this year. He does have 53 home runs. He's third in the league in home runs, behind Schwarber and, of course, Cal Raleigh. So in that regard, I mean, he's definitely got good numbers at the plate. But when it comes to when I think about an MVP, I can't put value on somebody that just hits. The same as somebody like Trey Turner or Kyle Schwarber that's also playing in the field. Somebody that is, having to have that defensive impact on the field versus all Shohei does when he's not pitching is go out, hit, go back, sit in the dugout. Go out, hit, go back, sit in the dugout. That's not as much of an impact to me, especially when you look at how stacked that Dodgers lineup is. I could honestly make an MVP case for Freddie Freeman. And on the Dodgers. And so, like, if you take Shohei Ohtani off of that Dodgers lineup, they still win their division. If you take Kyle Schwarber off the Phillies, they are a wild card team at best.
Agreed.
And that to me is a deciding factor. That's why I would lean more towards Schwarber or even Trey Turner. You can say the same thing about taking Trey Turner off of that Phillies lineup. That they take a hit, whereas removing Shohei does not have the same impact on the Dodgers, and that's why it's harder for me to justify it. But the baseball Raiders are going to go with who they like, and MLB is going to push it simply because they're making a ton of money off of Shohei Ohtani. So it'll be interesting to see. Last thing baseball related that I wanted to throw out. Last night, both the Detroit Tigers lost to the Cleveland Guardians, or the Bridges as I like to call them, 5-1. And the Astros lost to the A's 6-0. Those guys are currently fighting over who's going to take that last wild card slot. And it's like, you take it. No, you take it. No, you take it. They're trying to give it to each other, and they both just suck. So it's going to be interesting to watch that race. I'm going to try and get an MLB Morning Minute done after this before I start work. So if you are on TikTok, follow me at FGD7. I will be posting show clips throughout the week, and I just got clearance yesterday to start going live from my PC on TikTok. So I'm going to be doing some live streams there in the coming weeks, especially when we get into the playoffs for baseball. As we wrap it up, Mo, any final thoughts, and then go ahead and close us out.
Nope. Love chopping it up with you, going over some NFL. Definitely a great discussion about Russell Wilson and what we think of him as a potential Hall of Famer. And I thought you killed it going over the situation in the MLB about MVP in both the National and American League. So I'm glad you stepped in, had a blast. Hey, you ran the point like Chris Paul today. So I appreciate you so much. And you're always it goes without saying, you're always welcome on, man. I appreciate you so much. Thank you guys so much for joining us, especially you guys in the chat, Brandon, Damian, Endo, Jury, the whole crew. Thank you guys. Make sure you check out all the great content that we have at Wire to Wire Network. Wire to Wire Network, we appreciate you.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you for joining us. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. No, not that one. Where's the right one here? We're just going to do this.